Check. 1, 2. Welcome to the Mise-en-Scene Weekly podcast, where we harken back to our college debate days and pick two movies of the same theme to battle as if water and oil were combined. This week's episode is again Oscar 2023 focused, with the Academy's choice for Best Picture, with the Holdovers squaring up against Past Lives. So come join Jonathan and Steven for another week of desirably less plot chatter and hopefully more film banter. We are Scene Weekly, and welcome to our world.
Hey, welcome. That was good. I like the water and oil. That kind of mixed it up a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's the point of this. I'm going to run out of things to say eventually, I think, at least after another 49 of these or whatever it might be. I think a year in, I'm tapped out. But how are you,
Gotta
my
keep
friend?
trucking, though. I'm doing well. Got the day off. After this, I'm going to run my 4 miles
How is
per
your running?
my running log. Yeah, starting today.
So, so as the people who are viewing this or listening on Spotify, the coach would be me at this point, I guess. I did send you a running log that was to commence last Friday.
Correct. Yeah.
What
Well, it said Monday 4 miles. That's the start. So today's Monday. I'm going to go off of that. Direct orders, following it to a T.
So, but it didn't really say the Monday of like when you were supposed to start. There was a Friday there.
Yeah, but I'm going to start on
But you did say on Friday you were going to run your 4 miles as well.
Yeah, I didn't do that. Just a little backstory here. Jonathan is a runner. He's been a runner for quite a long time. I'm a former runner. We both ran in college together. And I've kind of gone off and on. A couple of years ago, I was doing a lot of 5Ks and then fell off of that a little bit. So I just need to get back into it.
Yeah, I mean that's what most people say. I just want to get back into it. I took 3.5 years off, 2010ish to 13. I want to say.
And then when was the last day you took off?
Running? I believe
Yeah.
it's November 19th, 2018 would be the date.
You're a maniac.
It might also be November 18th, 2018. For whatever reason, my brain can't put that down. It's a lot of days. But
So you haven't been sick any of those days where you just have to say, I gotta not tie up the shoes. I gotta stay in today.
there has been a significant number of days where I said, not really from sickness, but just misery. I wake up as an old person, or I feel like one, and the day gets away from me. Daughter duties, wife duties, and I'm just like, fuck this.
But you know what you do?
It takes longer for me to get out the door. I just do it. That's right.
You just do it.
Did you literally wear that shirt to ask that question?
No, it just came up organically. It was kind of serendipitous that way.
Those are words that you like to use often. So what are you drinking? Is it Colombian? What are we doing here?
That's Trader Joe's K-Cup.
Can I ask you a question? Oh, K-Cup. My God. We should stop this podcast now. What would we're just overboard. So first of all, can I give you a discussion on coffee as somebody that would not consider themselves a coffee snob? I guess to some extent I am now. We wanted the K-Cups. That was, what you started with when you're 16 years old, 17 or whatever it might be. I didn't drink coffee then, but coffee inherently can taste pretty poor if you don't treat it right, hug it, give it its honest due. K-Cup's terrible. Secondly, all coffee, in my view, should be ground, and so none of it should be pre-ground. So you're dealing with your whole beans, and before you use it, you should grind it. I have a lot of other tools and tips here, but nonetheless, get rid of your K-Cups. Sorry, Keurig. Unless you want to be a sponsor on this show, I love K-Cups.
There you go.
Especially that spice, those spices that you put in at November around Thanksgiving. Speaking of Spindrift, I would very much appreciate a sponsorship. Delectable. Drink this every day.
I don't think I've ever had a Spindrift.
Outstanding seltzer, because it actually it's 17 calories for the grapefruit. It's 17 calories. It's got actual fruit juice in it. Tastes real. Doesn't taste like it's gonna smack in your ass. Anyway, I went last. I went first last week. So why don't you go first this week and discuss?
Okay, gotcha. So this week's theme is kind of in line with last week. We are talking about the Oscars. Last week was all about animation and those categories. This week we chose from a pool of Best Picture candidates. Now, I've seen most of these Best Pictures. I don't know, how many have you seen, John?
It's more like what I haven't seen. All the
Okay.
trailers, so there's that.
All right.
I've seen Oppenheimer. I've seen Barbie. I have seen, of course, these two movies, The Holdovers and Past Lives. Um, and then I haven't seen the rest. I don't believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
You haven't seen Killers of the Flower Moon
I
yet.
have seen Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm overlooking that completely. Yes.
Okay. Well,
Oh,
yeah. So that we've seen a good bit. I've seen most of them. I think Zone of Interest. I just saw that, but I chose the Holdovers. Um, one because I saw this movie in theaters with my parents during the holidays,
nice.
and it struck a chord with me. It was it's one of those it's one of those Best Picture nominees that I don't think we really get these kind of movies anymore. And I say that it's definitely like a period piece, um, but I feel like it's not that kind of art house cinema, Best Picture or grand, epic Oppenheimer kind of thing that typically always gets nominated. This probably won't win, right?
Yeah.
This movie is great though, and kind of go into the plot a little bit here. Basic plot here is just basic. A curmudgeonly instructor at a New England prep school remains on campus during Christmas break to babysit a handful of students with nowhere to go. He soon forms an unlikely bond with a brainy but damaged troublemaker, and with the school's head cook, a woman who just lost a son in the Vietnam War. So they're all the holdovers at this boarding school over Christmas time. The film was directed by Alexander Payne with a Rotten Tomato score of 97%. Current
Good.
box office is 39.9 million. Um, Written by David Hemmingson. This is one of the few Alexander Payne films that wasn't written by him. Um, and I think the other one was Nebraska. But it stars Paul Giamatti, Divine Joy Randolph, and newcomer Dominic Sessa. Um,
Nebraska. Good thought there. I haven't seen that in black and white. Movie
Black and
like
white,
10
yeah.
years ago. Yeah, that was a great movie.
Bruce Dern.
My memory movie is very poor, so I love going back and watching movies that I knew I liked, but I didn't know why or what it's about, and just it's like a new movie all over again. Great film.
Yeah,
Didn't know Payne did that.
I think The Holdovers is Alexander Payne's best film since Sideways. Uh,
I mean, that is, I know how much the both of us like Sideways, so I mean,
and
one of the perfect
we
movies.
get to reunite Paul Giamatti and Alexander Payne, and amazing performance in both movies. And who?
And Paul plays Paul.
Paul plays Paul. Paul plays Paul. So yeah, he's an instructor at this boarding school. He's more of a teacher of his subject and not a teacher of his students. He kind of loathes his students. He was a student him uh, at that school when he was younger, and he's pretty much stayed there all his life.
Yeah, he
It's
did.
kind of that is his life, and nobody really likes him. He's
And he doesn't really
he's
like anybody else. I mean, curmudgeon is identical to what I would say. I mean, that one word encapsulates everything. I also think you should note straight off the bat, without having a visual cue here, the movie is a period piece at a northeastern school outside of Boston called Barton, but the way it's shot, and they went out to painstaking lengths to make this look like you basically had it filmed from an old early camcorder as well with like a green hue, but it's got this it's just got an old feel to it. Like somebody quite literally like unpacked it from a suitcase from many years ago and was like, here it is. This is what happened.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, and yeah, it has that feeling of those Hal Ashby movies like Harold and Maude and Being There. It wasn't shot on film; it was shot digitally, but they put like the scratches in there, and then even the opening title sequences. They like Focus Features didn't exist back in 1970, but they made a Focus Feature logo as well as a Miramax logo that kind of represents the time. I thought that was great.
That's neat. That's cool.
Yeah. Also with this film, they didn't film on any sets. They filmed all on location,
Yeah, yeah.
um, which is not really done today unless it's a student film or something like that. But filming in 5 different boarding schools to kind of get that look. Um, and they were freezing. They basically had to turn off like the heaters because the heaters were making noise and banging sounds and things like that. So
I was
yeah,
watching I mean, because I loved the setup, but like when you're, I guess having a podcast and thinking about what to talk about, I I love, for whatever reason, I love the like when I saw the gymnasium scene, I started first thinking about the smell of basketballs, but then after the smell of
yeah,
basketballs went away, I was like, look at the like electricity lines that are just identical to when I was a kid and had a gymnasium in Florida, and it looked so dilapidated. And like you would pull out, you know what the sound of the locker or the locker room is with the children inside. You also know the sound of like the just the entirety of the gymnasium, like the bricks and how it echoes, the bricking of the basketball echoes throughout the gym, and it just was so similar to my own upbringing that it brought back good memories. Honestly,
yeah, yeah. I
I thought I
mean,
was going to be a
it
professional
trans.
basketball player for what it's worth. Extremely dumb, clearly. I was 4'11" in sixth grade, still having that idea. It quickly went away after realizing that I'm not that
Yeah, there's only a few Muggsy Bogues in the world, and you're not going to be one of them.
great. No, no.
But yeah, I mean, the performances in this movie. I mean, Paul Giamatti, obviously, uh, Divine Joy Randolph. Like, I had never seen her in anything. I know that she's been in a few TV shows and movies and things like that, more as a comedic presence.
Yeah.
But she really blew me away. It's funny, when she got the script and kind of like the offer to read it, she's like, she never really heard of Alexander Payne, and she's like, huh, I wonder if he's any good. And they're like, well, and she met him and she's like, have I seen anything that you've done? And he's like, well, I did it. Yeah. She's like, he's like, well, I did this movie Election. And she's like, I've never seen it. And he's like, well, I also did a movie called Sideways. And she's like, oh, I saw that. I like that one.
Wow,
And she's like, okay, I'll sign up for
that
this.
is terrific. Oh my god, I had no idea. I because that would like his genre of film is very specific, I would say, and so you can go, you know, great films, but you can go without seeing all of them or any of
Yeah.
them, even when you're an actor or an actress.
Yeah. He's a satirist. He's got this comedy that's very, it's, I mean, I laughed out loud numerous times during this. I mean, just the dialogue alone from Paul Giamatti. Life is like a henhouse ladder, short and shitty.
I thought
I mean, what,
I thought actually when I was watching this, because I know how much you like Paul, um, I started seeing similarities between your own personalities. Not to say that you're a curmudgeon or similar to that, but I just feel like he's kind of you in an alter reality, like a different reality. Like you and him are the same.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I wish I had his acting chops. Then uh, he's more like in this film. He's like has a hard outer shell but a soft gooey center. He's very, you know what I mean. Like once you get to know him,
it's like
because
he's like a creme brulee of that.
yeah, exactly.
Do you
Um,
like creme brulee?
oh, I love it. It's one of my favorite desserts. Yeah,
Oof, delicious. Do you serve it at your restaurant?
yeah. We don't know. We serve something kind of similar. It's a banana cream pie, but that cream pie center
Mm,
tastes like like the inside of a creme brulee,
I
which
could go for that.
fantastic. Um, but yeah, Dominic Sessa, obviously never heard of him. He's a brand new talent. They basically were casting this film, and they were looking for over hundreds of actors and doing test screenings and things like that. And they were also trying to fill in background characters for the high school,
Okay.
for the boarding school. And Dominic Sessa was in this acting program at a boarding school at the time, one of the boarding schools that they filmed at, and they had him kind of test read for it, and he like he got the part, which was amazing. Like this, having somebody that's brand new having to act alongside Paul Giamatti, it takes a lot of talent. That's tough.
I can't imagine that to be. Well, I mean, he is an actor.
And holding his own. He held his own in it.
He did.
It was believable.
I
Yeah.
didn't know. Yeah, it was believable. I didn't know it was his first. Has he done anything before this, like small acting roles, commercials, anything of that
Nothing.
nature? He's literally
Nothing.
just in a boarding school, clearly of age that is needed. Was he of one of the 5 boarding schools that they had
Yeah.
pushed?
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, I don't. Boy, what a ticket that he just punched right there, huh?
I was looking up like the best like acting debuts of all time. I mean, he's got to be right up there with the zero resume. I mean, you have Edward Norton in Primal Fear.
Whew, yeah,
Uh, you
yeah.
have Natalie Portman in Leon the Professional. I
We
mean,
don't. I don't have to.
it's a
This is for a whole another podcast, but I'd have to do a major amount of research and review. What did Marlon Brando come in first at? I wonder. But we could
I don't know.
later.
Orson Welles and Citizen Kane.
Ooh, that's
It's an
another one
acting
that I
debut.
actually terrific all around, but I don't like Citizen Kane as much as other people do. Strangely enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic. But anyways, we're talking about 2023 movies. Yeah, the Holdovers. I mean, you got this trio of a cast um, that are isolated on Christmas. I feel like this is the new Christmas classic. It's one of the best Christmas movies I've seen in a long time. Um, yeah, and I loved it.
It felt almost as if like some of the scenes were like rotoscoped. Again, bringing up, I've never talked so much about rotoscoping in my life. It's just I did have one because there was a variety of kitchen scenes for which I found interesting. Where Mary, who is the woman who lost her child in the Vietnam War, and everyone's collectively kind of curmudgeon in their own different way, but for
They're all broken. They're all
all
broken people.
different purposes. But I just wanted to share. I've never seen like a polite, maybe in like some English show. I just haven't seen one. A polite kitchen scene. Like The Bear, for example, it's just like fucking chaos. And so I wanted you, as somebody who is a professional in your field, if you will, as a general manager of a restaurant, how did this match up in Mary's, own acting interpretation of what a kitchen should look like? Like, how does this compare to, what you're used to?
I'll give you one more. I'm actually the culinary manager.
Sorry.
That's okay. But it's kind of more to your question because I work in a kitchen all day. I work with cooks. And the reason why a kitchen is so chaotic is a number of things. Um, you're you're based on time, right? So everything has to get out at a certain point. You fall under very quickly. Everything is supposed to be what we call spec. It has to have the right cut, the right ingredients. If something's off, you can tell. Like the other, like last night, I was tasting one of our. We have these cornbread bites, right?
Yeah.
And I tasted one, and it tasted off. And I asked the chef who cooked it. I was like, "There's no sugar in this. Like you cooked these last night.
Right.
There's no sugar." Yeah,
Oh,
if you can imagine cornbread without sugar,
oh,
it's pretty awful.
yeah. This,
And he's
this,
like no, I put sugar 3 cups. I'm like, clearly you didn't
yeah,
because there's no sugar in this. I can tell. Like
yeah, you're chaotic. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but yeah, it's a that's why kitchens are like that. It's chaos at every turn.
Here's my explanation, and that's why I asked. I've never seen a kitchen, whether it's in real life, and you and I actually watched a kitchen in London for an extended period of time. But like I liken it to road rage. And so when you actually are in your car, when things are moving very, very quickly, people, and there's like some science that actually backs this up. I can't really direct you to the science itself. I have once heard, though, that road rage is really predicated on the fact that we're at such a high level of like, uneasiness or like anxiety because you're driving at like whatever the speed limit might be, like 60 or 70. I don't think you really get road rage when you're probably in the 15 to 20 mile an hour zone. But like when you're at 60 or 70, your decision making has to be a split second, which a kitchen is. And for a variety of different purposes, if you mess with somebody's food, that's a big it's a big deal, especially if this event is happening where, I don't know, you just got promoted to a new job. You just so happen to be on your 10th year anniversary or something along those lines. It's a significant event and one in which you want your family or your loved ones to actually be happy. And so if things aren't happening in the same manner at which you're anticipating, such as being in a car and having road rage, I feel like I liken them to the same. And then in essence, you have as well the people who are trying to be nice, like yourselves, the culinary manager, and as well as general manager. And you kind of have to like smooth all of that over. It's just I've never seen a kitchen scene that's not chaotic.
And that's why I think it's why it's made for such great storytelling, because there is always conflict. There is always something that's not right, that needs to be fixed. That, there there people bleed, people cut themselves,
For what it's
all
worth,
of those
I
things.
dislike the bear. I know, hot take, but just don't think it's great. But I'm very much
I can't watch it after working all day in a kitchen. The last thing I want to do is go home and watch somebody working in a kitchen
yeah.
and reliving the high stress environment.
Let me
Like,
do
that's
this
just not my
again
thing.
all over, but I want to watch other people do it now.
Yeah, I'll watch Anthony Bourdain travel the world and eat stuff, but I'm not going to watch somebody
Guy Fieri is
getting,
your number
yeah.
one, though. You really
Oh
you
yeah,
enjoy
yeah.
his dyed hair. I remember back in college, you
Diners and drive-ins,
used to dye your hair just like him.
little frost tips. Back to the movie. Yeah, so she's the cook at the boarding school. She just lost her son, so she's grieving. Her son was a student at the boarding school, and he was only there. I feel like the story doesn't say, but I think he was only there because she was a cook at the school, and he was a minority, obviously. Um, but she's grieving. I mean, that scene when she was in the the kitchen at the house party and she's just breaking down like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
like, felt that in every such way. But she's kind of like the glue that holds it together. She's that person that, um, between the two guys, Paul and Angus, she's kind of like, she's there to basically hold it all together. You know what I mean?
Hold them two specifically together, and she definitely is there as the glue, the adhesive for sure. I mean, she's the cook, and I think any good cook in any family is going to be the person, whether it's your grandma, like um, my wife's grandmother. I mean, was the glue to the family, and my mom as well, the glue to the family. I think if you're the
Yeah,
kitchen, you're gonna have to be that because everyone has to eat. I just
yeah,
I thought I don't know. It's after having a child. I've always been empathetic to families who have lost children along the way. I've had family members as well as close people to me, and it hits very differently when you have your own child, and then you're I don't know, almost like it's very difficult to process seeing it on screen, even though the person's acting. It's very moving and touching, and to be frank, I felt I felt her in the kitchen at that moment breaking down. Because good on her to even show up to begin with, but
right.
you know, people say life goes on, but it really doesn't. Like there's more of a pause, I think.
A pause and a piece missing. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, what she said after that scene, basically outside, when Paul is basically saying, like, I don't want to watch this kid. I don't want to watch you. And she's like, you don't tell a boy who's been left by everybody that you don't want him. Like, what's wrong with you?
You don't tell a boy
And
that's been left behind at Christmas that you're aching to cut him loose,
yeah, exactly. Like,
Mary.
and that got to Paul. Like, the next day he wakes up and he goes and buys the last Christmas tree on the lot. It's like a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. And
He try-
he's trying to
he's trying very
he's
hard
try,
to be nice to try to I don't even want to say reciprocation because at this point they're still at ends with each other. But he does wake up the next day wanting to change.
yeah, when he did, so he's like, "Hey, we're gonna have a nice Christmas. I'm gonna buy you some presents." They're
Right
both the same book.
and right at this exact moment, by the way, after he um it might be right before or right after this exact moment, uh was probably my favorite cut in the whole movie, where he's on the front of, I don't know where it was,
The zoom
the
smash.
out zoom, the zoom out,
Yeah.
basically, where he's like, Angus! Whoa! I was like, that is slick. That was my favorite part of like directing of the entire movie, because I love
Oh, mine
those
too.
shots. Those, but
That was a decision by Alexander Payne.
was it?
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously,
Oh,
he's behind the camera,
yeah,
but he
I think there was a cinematographer behind the camera, but nonetheless, that it was a very. It was almost as if Paul was screaming for a dog at that point. It just zooms out to the totality of the situation, where just everything is just covered with snow. They're probably freezing to death, and he's upset with his own life, and it's spilling out. But
and
great
what
shot.
yeah, and what was Angus was in the auditorium playing the piano. Just
Yeah,
he wasn't doing anything bad.
I thought there was
Yeah,
somebody there with him too for the longest time until he got up. He's like, "Hey, why are you here?" I just wanted to play piano. He's like, "Oh, all right, okay, let's
all
go."
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great scene there.
Uh, and so while they're having their Christmas dinner, Paul tells Angus like, "Hey, what do you want? What can I do for you?" And he's like, "I want to go to Boston." Um, and Mary wants to go to Boston too. She wants to get dropped off and see her sister who's about to have a baby. So they go to Boston, and I love the scenes in Boston, especially the scene where they run into Paul's former uh, classmate at Harvard, and they basically kind of do like a little improv of, of you know what's going on, because Paul's not Paul's been stuck in his same school forever. He hasn't it doesn't have any awards or things to really hang his hat on. He's just been teaching history.
And the man
And
he's speaking to has tenure, just received tenure at Harvard. They were classmates together. You don't know exactly what happened, and it seems like there's clearly a distance between them. They hadn't seen each other in 30 years, and he's standing in front of Angus. Effectively, no, he's just lying through his teeth. How
just
successful he is now.
well, Angus helps the lie, which is even better. He sees what's going on. He's like, well, Paul here is writing a book. Oh yeah, oh yeah. What's the book about? It's about ancient cameras, and he has to come up with a title:
Plot.
"Lights and Magic of the Ancient World."
I thought that was actually
Yeah,
pretty good. Because like that's to a T. That's pretty much what a book of that stature would be called or titled. And of course, they want to share information and get back together. But lo and behold, Paul really hasn't done anything to any effect.
he's just been drinking Jim Beam.
Do you like Jim Beam? This is one of the questions I had for you. Curious, are you a Jim Beam lover?
I'm not a Jim Beam guy. No, no. I do like my whiskeys, but I don't pull for the Jim
I
Beam.
don't mind it. I kind of enjoy it. I think if I had a choice, I would be choosing something like your Hudson. But is it Hudson Valley? Is it the full name? I don't even remember. But a Jim Beam is not too bad. So I actually appreciated the fact of he actually went into a liquor store to did a little circling effort to find his Jim Beam, which
That was one of my favorite scenes right there, where he's basically explaining why he got where his lot in life is. He got kicked out of Harvard.
not only kicked out of Harvard, but he's also summarizing why he was just lying and how that man cannot control him, and he's at the same time looking for just booze. It's just like his
Just
situation.
searching.
It's kind of like the reality of like you're a loser. How do you deal with this? Booze, kind of. But also having the conversation with Angus, that was probably in dialogue purposes probably my favorite scene. Yeah,
And you think it's just them two in that liquor store, and then all of a sudden you see the clerk behind he's witnessed this whole thing, right? And basically the setup of the joke is like, he got kicked out of Harvard because somebody plagiarized off of him, and he got not caught for plagiarizing, but it was a
somebody
it
tried to
was
throw
a
him under the bus, so he was
under the
plagiarizing,
bus.
but somebody who had a lot of strings to pull and can pull them or could pull them. Blamed him for plagiarizing, and then he took the fall as a scapegoat and was kicked out. Not kicked out for that purpose, was kicked out because
Because he hit him.
he punched him.
No, he hit him with a car.
Right, that's right. He hit him with a car, but it was,
And then what the clerk says at the end is like, what did he say? He's like, that'll be, $5 killer. He called him killer. I just love that. Love those little scenes. But yeah, I think that's where Angus and him really bonded, was in Boston. They got to see each other for who they were. Another scene that was also drawn from inspiration from the writer of the movie's life was that scene with the hooker in the outside bookstore.
Yeah.
That actually happened to the writer of the movie
Oh,
when
wow.
he was 7. And yeah, the hooker was like, "You could just wait around the corner,"
That was
pulling from all those experiences.
of any moment in the whole movie that was so random. Like, it was like, what? Like, what?
Yeah, it was very
What?
random.
Like, I'm not following this.
Yeah, I think it was just plugged in there because it was a real life experience. Another real life experience was the Cherries Jubilee scene,
Mm.
where that they're at a restaurant and they want to order the Cherries Jubilee as their dessert, and the waitress goes, I can't serve that to you. It's got brandy in it." And Angus Tully is 18, 17, 18. And they're like, why not? That's so absurd. The alcohol burns off. She's like, no, I can't do it. So they just order, well, do you have cherries? Yeah, we got cherries. You got ice cream? Got ice cream. They take it outside and eat it. But that's kind of something that's also happened in my restaurant before,
Oh,
where
yeah.
we have to tell, yeah, we have to tell somebody no. And they're like, what? I don't understand. Like, for instance, there's one time when I was working in Denver, and these guests come in, and the guy wants to order a Long Island iced tea.
Sure.
We don't serve Long Island iced teas. It's not part of we say it's not part of our bar program, right? It's just not something that we do. And he's like, I don't understand. What? He's like, okay, give me a shot of gin, shot of rum, shot of tequila, shot of vodka, Coke, and a lemon. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, yeah, and give me a large glass full of ice. He makes his own at the table. It was,
Thank you.
I believe, a $68 cocktail.
I love that.
And he's like, I'm going to do it.
He's like,
I'm
"Fuck
going to make
you.
it.
I'm gonna do this myself." Like, I really, really, and at this point, we're in. I'm all in. Because, like, Long
Yeah.
Island, $20-$25 most normally.
Yeah, most.
Yeah. Whew. Good for him. Did he leave? Did he get a second?
Yeah.
Did he get a second?
I don't think so. No, I don't think he got a second.
Can I get another shot of gin? Can I get another? Yeah, that'd be hysterical. I actually have before we get to the ending, which we should probably push towards. I do have a quote. I don't know if it's even purposeful. Actually, you can go into it. More of the details. I think it would merit this quote.
So we're going to, okay. So basically, the whole idea of Angus wanting to go to Boston was to see his father. Now, we thought his father was dead. His mother remarried. That's the reason why he didn't get a Christmas break, is because they wanted to have their own little honeymoon without him. And that's why he got held over. But yeah, he wanted to go see his dad, and we learned that his dad is in a mental institution because he's mentally deteriorating, and Angus really wanted to see him. I mean, what you want to see family at Christmas? You want to see how your dad's doing? He has great memories of his dad, even though he's in a mental hospital,
Yeah.
and that's what we learned. So at the end of the movie. Angus's parent, or his mom and stepdad, find out that he went to go see his dad, and his dad had a few episodes and started getting violent in the mental hospital, and he wasn't supposed to go see him. They're really, really angry at Angus for going to see his father. And there's a moment where they confront Paul's character and said, just tell us that Angus manipulated you to go see his father. And this is where he could tell the true history of what happened, or maybe they're not entitled to that history of what happened, and he can tell a version to protect Angus. And that's what he does. He says, I encouraged him to go see his father, and we couldn't get a hold of you. It's during Christmas, and I thought he should see his dad.
Yeah.
And he stood up for him, and that was a beautiful moment. And then at the end, he walks out, and there was a conversation earlier where Angus was like, because Paul has this glass eye, this lazy eye, right? And he's like, what eye should I look at? And at the very final scene, he looks at Angus and he's like, points to the good eye. And he says, this is the eye you look at. The funny thing is they switched the lazy eye throughout the movie.
Oh, I had no idea.
Did you notice that?
No.
At one moment it would be in the left eye. The next scene it would be in the right eye.
No idea.
It kind of reminds me of the movie Robin Hood.
Oh yeah,
Men in Tights.
Yeah, Men in Tights. Right.
Where the mole just moves across the face. But
That's hysterical. This I have to ask you this question because this question is something that my wife and I have talked ad nauseum, and I've asked I don't know how many numbers of people this exact same question of like when you're looking at somebody and you're speaking to them, or even when you're not speaking to them, even like on a Zoom conversation, whatever it might be, but there's a face in front of you and you're communicating in some capacity, like what do you look at? A nose, the left eye, the right eye, or is there a mixture? Mouth? What do you do, Mr. Steven?
I mean, you're supposed to look at people in the eye, right? So,
but is that what your parents had told you?
I mean, I think that's the right thing to do.
You sure it's not like the vicinity of your eyes?
Yeah, you can dart off, you can kind of move around, but eye contact, that's the key, right? What do you do?
I have very good eye contact with people, but I also have an ability, I think, to slip. I think there's a very good telling point between a person's lips and their that in some instances are more telling than looking at somebody's eyes. But with that said, I would suggest, at least for me or my own daughter, I tend to do all three, so both eyes and mouth. And depending on if things are, I think anger is really easy and noticeable on your lips, as well as, of course, for eyebrows. But I think on the lip section, you can tell anger pretty well and pretty quickly. At least I can. But I tend to move between eyes and a mouth, and I don't look at it any one way. And probably
Do you notice when people don't make good eye contact?
very much. For example, this happened in BJJ. I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a couple times a week. This happened in BJJ, Saturday, where a guy just didn't want to have good eye contact. I mean, to be honest, like my wife as well, her eye contact for me is fine, but like to other people, she's shy. So people can be shy from time to time, right?
Yeah.
I do think eye contact is pretty crucial to communicate with people. But I have one last thing of the connection between Angus and Paul. I thought was great, kind of like a fatherly figure. But he and this was a little before things came to a head, and he stuck up for him. Paul stuck up for Angus, but he was saying that and I believe they're at dinner when he has this quote. I find the world a bitter and complicated place, and it seems to feel and it seems to. Let me just start over. I find the world a bitter and complicated place, and it seems to feel the same way about me. I think you and I have this in common. I've clearly written this quote incorrectly, or quotation, but I feel like that's one of their connecting moments, and I think a lot of people actually do this online now, where it's like they connect with each other and their similar hated items, whether it's like politicians or the like. But this is at least one of the first instances of you can be bitter and not do anything about it, and you're gonna look like me, or you got your whole life ahead of you. And I think that's really
Yeah.
the ember moment for me, and what the deciding factors are going to be. And we never find out, but they go their separate ways, and that was that.
Yeah, I think my ember moment was the three of them outside with a box of eating Cherries Jubilee from a box. And it's the found family aspect of it. They all found themselves. They're taking this thing that they couldn't get, and they created it themselves, and they're trying to enjoy it together. They light it on fire, but it was just so poignant of what the movie was about, of them kind of finding their family and embracing the taking something that they can't have and making it their own, whether that be the Cherries Jubilee.
I don't like cherries. Do you like cherries?
Not a cherry guy unless it's in a Manhattan, but
Yeah, I'm not a fan. Just don't. Yeah. One thing I forgot to do is actually score our movies. Not that we're there yet, but I have yet to score. So I guess we'll have to do this live. So, am I up? Am I next? Are we here?
any closing thoughts on this? I mean, like I said, I don't think it's going to win Best Picture, but I think Paul Giamatti is going to take the Best Actor
You think?
award. Yeah, it's between him and Cillian Murphy. I feel like, but I think Paul deserves it.
Yeah, because you are Paul. He's your long lost father. This alternate reality, or maybe he is you and you are him. Um,
Did you feel this movie was a little bit not schmaltzy is the word, but I feel like it never crossed that line.
I will give you my honest opinion, which I have a good many on this movie at the very end when we rate this.
Got it.
I think
Okay.
to be expressive in the positive or negative side is probably going to just detract away from the end result of us at the very end. We can actually speak our minds, and then we can also go into like what we think is going to win. And I think that's maybe what we did last week of like, what do you think is going to win? Or like, that's a fun conversation to have, and it's very, very different than this podcast inherently. Like, what is our desire? What do we want to watch? Which was actually quite difficult in our understanding of like what we're going to be choosing, primarily because
Yeah.
Steven has watched everything under the sun this year. I tend to wait a little bit until it comes out on for streaming. Going to the theaters is a little more of an effort from my perspective. And the second it comes out, I just pretty much buy all the movies. With that said, I just haven't had the time to see all of them yet. So, of course, I am biased. Of course, yes. And I will say this: I have to start. I chose Past Lives, and I did watch about half of the movie before I did choose it. But watching the trailers, and I did see Barbie and Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon, and so I just wanted to kind of choose something that was, I guess, more to my heartstrings to some extent. My wife is Korean American. I do have a Korean American daughter, and so I am clearly white. I did live in Korea from 2006 to 2007. I speak a very small amount of Korean, and I've seen a copious amount of Korean cinema as well as Korean drama, as you might imagine, having a family that is Korean and at nature. So while I will not speak in any way, shape, or form for Korean culture, I'll try to do my best to represent it. And I have a nice scarf here that I brought from Sarah's.
Would you say your Korean is basically on par as Arthur in the film?
A little better than Arthur,
A little better.
but not
Okay.
not great. I would say, yeah, his speaking wasn't too bad. Um, his speaking wasn't too bad, but Arthur is one of the main characters, and I'll just give the synopsis here. So it's a very succinct and easy to tell story, and one in which I would say from the outset seems like it's been done many times before, but it's just done in a very different way, and I think it's been done in a very Korean influenced way, which I appreciate. Oftentimes in Korean cinema, you don't have things that are prepackaged like in an American cinema where things always end up well or end up in a good light, and oftentimes they could be in a completely disastrous light, but you still feel good at the end, even if that's a rumbling in your stomach, maybe um, harkening back to your own insecurities. But with that said, directorial debut from Celine Song. She's a Korean Canadian uh, uh, artist. She has made two plays before this, as well as had her hand in a sundry of other things. But directorial debut, I don't know. Oftentimes, you have such a good movie and your first go, and just as what's his name? His real life name?
Dominic Sessa.
Okay, yeah, just crushed it. But with that said,
Yeah, yeah.
came out last year. Drama, 96 Rotten Tomatoes, 7.9 on IMDb. These numbers are always moving, but the 12 million budget, 26 million box office. But It's about Nora, who Nayoung is her name in Korea, and oftentimes when people move from Seoul or anywhere in Korea, like my wife, she has a Korean name, and as well as my daughter has a Korean name, but we call her, well, we interchange. But with that said, um, she goes by Nora when she moved and emigrated from Seoul, and she left when she was there a man, Haesung, who at the age of, I think they were 12,
12,
more or
yeah.
less broke up with, a budding relationship, if you want to call it that, or maybe even one that's more deeply connected. But they're two deeply connected childhood friends. They're torn apart after Nora is immigrating from South Korea, and decades later, they're reunited for one fateful week as they confront destiny, love, and the choices that we make in life. And again, it's a very simple structure, but I think that the telling scenes of throughout, in the commonality throughout, is, and what I appreciated probably more than anything is the emotion that's being provided to the viewer without words.
Oh, it's yeah.
Seemed, I don't know many movies. I'm still thinking about this. I don't know many movies that are like this, where you in there's dialogue, of course, throughout, like when they're at the restaurant, when everyone's speaking to each other, or I guess more loosely, and just when the silence happens, and I just think there's so much telling moments in between the silence of words, that is actually
Just the looks that they give each other.
more vocal
And
than actually speaking, which
yeah.
we'll get into in a second. But it's, I still can't believe it's her directorial debut. But with that said, there's three parties: the two 12-year-olds who effectively broke up. And Haesung, he is left in Korea, and she immigrates to the United States, and eventually he wants to find her again. Doesn't know why. There's no reason, but she had since gotten married, and along the way, in essence, they drifted apart. In short, for whatever reason, and Haesung still had very deep emotional connection and wanted to see, I guess, where that really sat. Um, that's the bit of it, and I think what one thing I want to point out. I love when Korean cinema does this. There's always, and I am a writer myself and trying to complete a book right now that actually kind of encapsulates what the effort is here. But Inyan, I don't know if you ever heard of that, but Inyan,
I hadn't heard of it until this film. Is that a pretty
yeah,
common known thing in Korea?
it's common, but I want to start off immediately with this because it's common, but it's common in the inverse. The common in the inverse means like if you broke up with somebody, you would say inyan anya, which is like we just didn't have inya. Uh, and
Ah,
and it's like we didn't have this, so therefore it didn't work. Our past lives, which in effect is that inyan. You see somebody on the street, you maybe hadn't seen them in your entire life, or you have, and you have these past lives or this past collective consciousness that you know you touch each other, and it brings that back. And so the whole gamut, the whole run of this movie is basically the ideology or the idea that people do have these past lives, and are they meant to be together? That's really what it comes down to. But I've never seen Inyan like in this capacity. I could have probably,
she used it as a pickup line at
yeah,
first.
yeah, yeah. So, but I've never seen it like this, so it's an interesting. I liked it, and because it's a very different one. Typically speaking, when people break up, they're just like, "Anya, we didn't have it," um, which I appreciated. What did you think of it?
Yeah.
The movie as a whole, and you know,
I'll start with because I watched it a few months ago, and then I watched it again this week um, for the second time. And watching it the second time, like I noticed a lot of different things. Like that very first opening scene, I don't know if you remember it,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's told from the perspective of other people sitting at the bar, looking at these three people and kind of wondering what the relationship is between each person. And that's kind of like you as a viewer, just if you like to people watch, like kind of like, oh, what's their relationship like? Who's with who? Is this a business thing? Is this a romantic thing? Like you don't know. But the thing is, everybody has a story. These three people have this amazing story that nobody else will know, but they can speculate on it.
Do you
And
ever do that yourself, where you are in your restaurant and you try to speculate at these people sitting together at a table, where you think, man, how did they get together? And then do you ever speculate with the staff, be like, you be that person, I'll be the woman, and we're going to talk about it. It's like, do you ever?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You definitely have those moments of, or some kind of things of like there was this one guest, this one lady who would bring in a different gentleman every time she came to the restaurant. We kind of narrowed that speculation down a little bit,
Yeah,
but yeah, I like doing that. I mean, people watching like at the airport is like one of my favorite things.
yeah.
It's, where are they going? What's their life like? And that's kind of like what this movie is about, is setting up. Like we're seeing these three people and, not knowing what that relationship could be, because Nora is, kind of in a very intense leaning over conversation with uh, Haesung, and you have Arthur that just kind of just sitting off to the side, being very chill about the whole thing, that, he's sitting at a bar while these two past people, childhood friends, childhood little romance, are talking in a language that he can't understand, and he has no idea what they're saying.
Let me pause you there. First of all, now we're getting into the details
Yeah,
of what actually happened, or discussions and things of that nature. And this is also like the very end of the movie, more or less. But with that
right.
said, let's take a few steps back. But I will say this: C- could you ever do that as the husband? So the husband, I'll just give the explanation. I'm hanging out. I'm in New York. My long lost love from when I was 12 years old is looking for me. Puts a post out for my former name before I changed my name. Had a difficult time finding, and then you find that post because somebody leads you to it. You guys start communicating, and so literally what you were talking about and what you're focused on is your. I mean, can you really love somebody at 12? Who knows? But let's just say you can. What do you do in a situation of your wife constantly talking about the former love, and it appears that he still is in love and wants to meet in New York to visit you for a week? What would you do?
That's a tough question. I mean, I think what I would do, I would hope, if I was put in that situation, is the exact same thing that Arthur did, was be kind of hesitant about it, but be very still cool and respectful of like, hey, they haven't seen each other in a long time. Me, I'd probably do the same thing. I'd hope. If I mean, it's a tough question. What about you?
I would hope I would do the same thing, and I myself consider I do write books even though people don't read them, but like I have that curiosity of like the same thing Arthur said is I'm a writer. We're both writers. I couldn't write this. Like this is so romantic and so purposeful of this guy who's been waiting with his heartstrings being plucked and looking for you, searching, can't find you because he has a different name, decides that he's going to put a post up, eventually does find you, wants to come to America, still has the heartstrings being pulled, and here you are, married. Ooh, that hurts, right? Let's see. Let's just take my bat out and see if I can hit a baseball, even though I hate baseball. Let's see what happens here. I it's an interesting question and one I have thought about. I think I would try my best to be as cool as possible. Like what 12-year-old is going to be taking away like your wife? Do you know what I mean? Like you've been married I think they were married for 7 years when this first started. I don't know the exact when he did come, but like 7 years. I'm not afraid of any 12-year-old. It's just not going to happen. Uh,
But he shows up and he's this tall, handsome, towering presence of a Korean man, and he's good looking. Like Arthur's got to be a little bit like, oh, holy shit!
and
Like
that was, by the way, the first
this is
time
that
in the
guy.
kitchen was the first time the actors even met.
Oh wow,
Yeah, so
I didn't know
they
that.
never talked to each other. They knew nothing about. I mean, I'm sure they knew about each other, but that was the first time face to face that they had met because Celine was like, "I want this to be as awkward as possible, probably." But I like moments in film that you learn that later, and you're like, "Oh, that's probably why it just was so interesting," or like
was kind of, yeah, it was kind of
Yes.
awkward.
There was more because you get into that character and then you meet and you still are that character to some extent. But I felt, to take a step back, the Indian is prevalent throughout, but also what is like wind chimes, the musical um, instruments that are used throughout are so tied to the emotional value and emotional complexity of the movie itself. So you're having to deal with past lives. Where would we be if we were together? Which at the very beginning of the movie isn't said, but at the very end of the movie, when they're going back to that scene again, you actually get to see what they're talking about. And very much, they're talking over Arthur's head, and directly in front of him in Arthur's face. And so, while Haesung did apologize after to say, like, I can't really communicate very well, I found that moment. I don't think that would happen in Korean culture, but who am I to say? I just feel like Korean,
Is that too impolite?
yeah, it's impolite. It's very respectful culture. I don't think that would happen. But nonetheless, I also found it the humor in this, that he the actor, or him acting, he didn't speak very good English, or like extremely limited, which actually directly ties back to when Celine was in the East Village at a restaurant, and the same exact situation happened to her, where she sat down with her, I believe, husband or boyfriend at the time, and an ex-boyfriend was like right next to her, and they were communicating just as they were doing here. So this actually
Wow.
born out of an idea that happened to her, and she felt like there was like these past lives, like what would have happened, which we all probably do to some extent in the situation. But he actually, I have, not to stereotype, but I've never seen any Korean in real life actually not speak fluent English if they went to even a mid-tier university, like and never stepped foot in on American soil. So like it's a rare occasion, and actually in real life he does speak fluent English in three other languages.
In German, I believe. Yeah.
I was like, that's pretty funny. But I think, and I want to go back to the original point, as well as something that you've said, but and to transition it to more of a pointed angle here. But like, there was a quote that um, it's useful, but like, if you can leave something behind, you can gain something too, which is kind of almost in essence what Haesung has been telling her throughout the entirety of it. She left in a very cold manner, just as like, I'm 12 years old and probably don't even know what love is. And when they're in Korea, he was very seemingly distraught. I think, I can't remember if she was on the stairs going up or he was on the stairs, but there was an angling difference of one was looking up to the other, and she was just like, I'm leaving. Got to do this, and he was seemingly distraught and would continue to be distraught for the next 20 years or so. Um, but it's interesting. What would you do if a version of this came back to you? Do you have any 12-year-old loves?
Uh, Not that I can really remember, just because as a kid, every 3 or 4 years, I had to move. So
Right.
I was kind of used to that, like saying goodbye to my friends. And it's weird, when Facebook came out and it came to the masses, you'd get those like friend requests of people that you were like friends in elementary school with, and you're like, whoa, I haven't thought about you in decades.
Have
Like, what, like, you know what I mean? That was kind of a phenomenon back in 2008, 2007, when Facebook was, getting widespread. And this is kind of when they kind of first reconnected and started doing their like little Skype calls and stuff like that. So, did you ever get those like random Facebook requests from somebody from second grade?
I did, yeah. I actually followed up with a few of those as well, just to see what people are doing. So, yeah, I actually had best friends from middle school that I would actually reach out to. Chris White, holla at Chris White. Um, for whatever reason, I mean, from all of middle school, we were very good friends. Played basketball together on the same team, and just clutch 3-point shooters. We would like even now. I bet we would crush in a 3-point competition. Went to like summer camps together and things of that nature. Yeah, but he was one of those, and we still actually communicate now. Manchester City fans, so support
There you
my
go.
friend. But yeah, I have had others besides Chris that I met them and they were disasters, like complete disasters. And that's how I perceive this to really be, because my the difference in my own personality from 12, well, not personality, but who I am, what I know from 12 until now is drastic. So 30 years.
Yeah, that person doesn't exist anymore.
Crystal, can't remember her last name. She got me for my birthday in 7th grade a No Fear t-shirt. Thank you, Crystal. Love the t-shirt for a long period of time. If she came into my life, I would be like, I could not give two fucks. Nor would I wouldn't even be really that interested to see what this was about. But if they're nice about it, I would probably have the conversation, entertain it. Who knows? But
Yeah.
I want to say one thing. There's this ember moment or mise-en-scene or something. I don't know what this is tickling. And it's one of my favorite quotes of I have a few favorite quotes, but there's two quotes in one. And they're husband and wife are sitting or lying down, snuggling. I'm not a snuggler, so I don't really understand the snuggling part, but it was very powerful when they're discussing, Arthur saying, I don't speak Korean. I wish I knew you better. This is like a dream come true. If you were to be a writer, who could script this? And
Yeah.
he goes, do you know you only speak in Korean when you talk in your sleep? And I myself have noticed this with my own wife.
Oh, wow.
In situations, she didn't speak English until she was like fluently, like until she was 8. So she was in like ESL and brought up by her grandmother. But I found that fascinating because it's like, it's so true. Like your first language is going to be that first instinctual notion, but like one in which I didn't understand his reply though. It's like, he said, he said that and she's like, oh, you want to understand me when I'm dreaming? And he said, yeah. And I was like, well, fucking go learn Korean. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, if you want to, if this is such a yearning for you to desire to understand almost a decade of being married, your wife, go learn it. What are we talking about here? If it's affecting you, that anyway, that was one of the things. But
That's a good point. I didn't think of it that way. I thought it was very kind of, he had this yearning to understand her at a deeper level that he never will. But
he
you're
could.
right. Just go learn
He
Korean.
could. I have a very pragmatic mindset, and maybe I have taken a 23andMe, and it did say that I was 99.9% greater Neanderthal genes than everyone else who has ever done a 23andMe. That's neither here nor there, but I will say this: instantaneously, I had zero empathy, and I'm like, "That's your bad. If you want to get closer to your wife, for example, I'll give you a great example.
There's Rosetta Stone,
Yeah,
bro.
I'll give you a great example. I 4 years ago, I'm a Guinness lover, and so my wife had been drinking Guinness if she were to consume alcohol from time to time, and for whatever reason, she decided that she wanted to transition to wine. I didn't drink wine, and I know you know this story, but everyone else does
Yeah.
not. And I wanted to understand her better, and I also wanted to satisfy her emotional. Just I wanted her to have a good glass of wine when it came down to it. No clue on wine. What did I do? I created the largest spreadsheet that basically was a sommelier course that I created myself, and then I filtered over 4 years, and tried with an Excel file, like rated whites and reds to figure out what her favorite. And we figured out Northern Italian reds are her favorite, specifically Barberas, if you really need to know. And then before, I guess that's second, but first would be Brunellas. Always changing. But I then took the next step, went to get a WSET certification for sommelier level 1. I'm taking level 2 here. You got take the step. What are you talking? Go learn Korean. It affects you.
Uh, That's the thing. That's the thing about you, John. Is Jonathan is. I feel like if you're going to do something, you're going to do it. Like if you're gonna run and compete, I'm going to run every day. If you're gonna try and learn about wine, I'm gonna be certified sommelier. Like that's what I'm gonna do.
I mean, when you say it, it sounds kind of dumb, but it's yeah. If you're gonna do
There's no half measures.
yeah, yeah. And speaking of no half measure, here is a no half measure quote, and this is my favorite, and this is actually something that I think about. I've thought about almost every single day since watching this movie. I watched it in like 2 1 hour periods, but um, I think Arthur said this. I don't even remember now that I think about it. Maybe anyway, the married couple saying it's like planting two trees in one pot. Our roots need to find their place. I think of this in the same way of two pictures in one frame. In that you have two plants in one pot, one life, effectively, and so you're growing together. And so while you may and may not get on each other's nerves, roots, overstepping, you're figuring it out, but you're going to find your way as long as you're in that one pot together still. And I always think of, and I've always thought of it, and this is a much deeper metaphorical example that they provided that I'm just going to start ripping, changing to my liking. But I always thought of it as we each are our own picture frame. And so like the frame behind you and the frames here, like let's say we have our own movie poster, for example. And then we each have like, women on the verge of a nervous breakdown here, as well as old boy here. And then you would have, and that's myself and my wife or your spouse or whoever it might be, relationship, who what have you. And then beyond that is another frame, which is in effect the one pot, where you each have your own life in this frame, but you're collectively working together. The root makes a lot more metaphorical sense. I think everyone can understand this. I pretty much am just giving the dumbest example possible, but that's what I've been using for 15 years, and now I just have to use something else. But it was such a powerful moment, and I like
Loved it.
almost one where I bet they would use that in like therapy. Like if you would be a therapist and you'd be like, you know what, Joey, you know what I think about this. You two need to be more like two plants in one pot. And I'd be like, that's good shit, brother or sister. I can get with that. I mean, that's amazing, right?
Is your therapist like a Southern lawyer that smokes a pipe?
I don't.
Or, you know what I think, my
She's got a
son.
seersucker suit on.
Yeah,
Maybe why? Murder She Wrote. Yeah, Boss Hog. Anyway,
yeah, boss hog.
um, that was, I would say, one of my favorite parts. And I again, the simplicity of the movie itself is it's a simple notion of love or the desire of what love could be. But the Korean cinema and Korean influence is like so strong where to get to the absolute end, and I'll describe the ending in a second, but he thinks, he's going to hit it out of the park here. And he thinks he's going to come back and explain his love. And
Did you
kind of
did you
quiet.
think that she would run off with him or
Do you want to know what I
go with
thought?
him? Yeah,
I thought
I
for
do.
sure there's no running off. Like the more it moved time wise, I was like, and maybe this is just me being structured and understanding Korean cinema, but also just cinema generally. I was like, if you do the running off, this movie sucks. You're pissed.
Right.
You're really really fucking angry, and I think you would. It would be.
I don't want to see that
I
movie.
don't want to see that movie in any way, shape, or form.
I've seen that movie before.
Yeah, exactly. And
It's so
I
trite.
my guess was it wasn't going to go that path. And even at the last scene where they're staring at each other for what seems to be 5 minutes while he's waiting for an Uber to go back to Seoul, there's
You think like, are they going to kiss? Are they going to do like
there's
something?
slight movements in the background, like there's little things moving here and there. Not much sound actually existing, and you're wondering. But even before that, and I would say the 30 minutes before that, even up until that point, I didn't know how much time was left at that point, but I felt like it was the ending. I would I've seen so many Korean movies. Old Boy is one of my favorites, and I was like, if you've ever seen I Saw the Devil, or like there's twists in movies like Ajoshi, Shilmido, and like things are not always happy uh, in any way, shape, or form. And I at one point I was like, is he gonna murder her? Like, is this gonna turn into something that because I watched the trailer, but outside of that, I don't look at anything to do with the movies until after I watch it. And I was like, Korean said this could clearly go through uh, to a different type of mentality here. I was like, let's see what happens. And at that point, I was kind of annoyed at Haesung, like, how dare you come into somebody else's life? After, like, you're 12. Like, what kind of relationship are you going to have now?
He even, like the way that he, like, walked around with his backpack looked like he was a school kid. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, he was still kinda stuck in that. He was still that 12-year-old.
he was definitely stuck. But there was and speaking of that, I think that moment was actually when they're going to the Statue of Liberty, where they,
Have you ever been to the Statue of Liberty,
I
John?
have, and if you've just waited 1 second, you would have heard the story. Jesus Christ! So my wife is from New York, and so she had never been to the Statue of Liberty until we got together, and I wanted to, go to the Statue of Liberty, so we did. We took my family, and I always found that interesting because this is so common with New Yorkers who had overwhelming odds. If you ask a proper New Yorker, they haven't been to the Statue of Liberty, and nor do they even want to.
I thought yeah.
Like, it's not
I was gonna ask that
it's not
question,
even
like,
a
do you
desire.
is that a thing?
No, it's not. This is very prevalent in New York, and people actually like not going to while married or whatever it might be. Like I have no, like, or just not even having a driver's license for that matter. But I found it uh, very telling, and this is like what Celine did really well, and I guess everyone in collectively in the statue pictures where he wanted to take a picture, and she like Nora had to smile. She was going to smile, but she couldn't smile too much. I was like, if she
Uh-huh.
smiles too much,
Yeah.
and that gets back to my husband, does that become a thing? Do you know? And
Yeah.
it was interesting because she first started smiling a little more, and then she like lessened it. And I was like, it's interesting. Secondly, my wife also didn't smile in any picture whatsoever until we met, and I wasn't I'm not making her smile, but it's very common in Korean culture not to smile at all in pictures.
I didn't know
But
that.
it was it was funny, and it also was funny when she brought up on her phone the image of their wedding day, and and zooms in to like crop him out, the husband Arthur.
Yeah.
I was like, that's fairly aggressive, and that's where I was like, I don't think I like this situation anymore. But
What other authentic, like, New York like, the apartment that they had, did that feel pretty authentic?
for writers, no. I mean, when I first moved to the city, I wasn't making. I had nothing to write home about. Did you see that apartment?
Yeah, I saw most of your apartments.
Okay,
Or that
that
first
first
one?
apartment was like 4 by 8, basically, or like no, it was a little larger than that. But you opened a futon, and the futon was the whole room. And I also had a Boston Terrier, R.I.P. Rocky, who was there with me. And so it was, to say the least, it was a fascinating endeavor. But that was $800 a month when I first moved, 2007, and
What do you think that apartment is now?
I didn't get to see too much of it. I did see, they had the video game scene where she came home in the kitchen. First of all, if you have any sort of hallway like that, it's a fairly expensive place. But I don't know if it's a 1 bedroom studio or 2 bed. If I had to guess, those of course are going to change drastically. It looked like a 1 bedroom at least. 3 grand at minimum, but 3 grand for writers. It's a pretty intense. I would say it's a pretty intense setup. But anyway, I love the fact that they also make fun of they carried over the psycho was repeated over and over and over. Like, you're ridiculous for thinking that. Like, you psycho. That's another one that I would never have thought of. But when I went to go teach in Korea in 2006, my very first day teaching, I used the word crazy, and the whole class went ape shit, like, in laughter. Yeah, in laughter. And I was like, either I am the funniest person on earth and I found one word to utilize, or I'm missing something here. But it turns out, yeah, if you it's like not terribly offensive, but like michanya, if you were to use that, like, are you crazy? It's like it gets an effect on children. You're saying the children, but children, or even like your spouse or something along those lines, like calling somebody for different purposes, like a psycho. It's very common, and fun. It's like, it's kind of cute.
What about, I was wondering when they kind of first met, in New York, they gave the hug. They didn't really say much, but they were walking off and they just kept saying, "Whoa."
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's
but it meant different things.
yeah, I would say that's pretty common too. Just the gathering of information if you haven't seen somebody in a while. That happens a lot when because I'm around like Koreans family and or otherwise, but Koreans are very respectful in the sense of like I know they're Koreans and Koreans, but like they're talking. He was talking about Arthur and how Arthur likes Yukejang, which is a very uh like you're gonna get into the good graces of a Korean family or a Korean relationship if you like Yukejang because it's a very pungent stew and pungent in the sense like it's red pepper heavy with mushrooms, delectable. But it's not something that if you go into a Korean restaurant and you're just a white person and asking what should I order, you know, like kalbi or bulgogi or like torsat bibimbap or something like they're gonna give you one of those three. Like I love mulnaemyeon, which is like strange, but that yukejang is like I've ordered it once or twice. I've had it a ton at home, but it's like grandmother's stew for most. And so the fact that he did love it, I bet changed the perspective of Haesung like immediately because Koreans are if they see you're embracing their culture are so like so warm, very very warm. But it was nice. I like that moment. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess I have just a few more things.
What I have a question for you,
Hit me.
and I mean, maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't, but,
Probably
like,
not.
she was describing to Arthur, Haesung, and she just said, "He's so Korean." What does that mean?
Yeah, Korean men. And I guess I can use my wife. We discussed this in like in particular, and I think most cultures they have their own like tie to romanticism and like you in your particular upbringing. But I think there's oftentimes like Korean men who are very Korean for whatever that might be, but also have various ties to maybe the romantic side of like things should end up perfectly. Um,
Mhm.
and I think the differences in the 1950s Korea and the 1990s Korea and even like the 2020s Korea is very different. I can speak from just being in families that I could see the transition, and I will say I would say now you'll see more often men who are in the kitchen helping out and helping out their spouses, whereas I think in before that I would say it's things are more delineated, and I think that's what she was getting to. But also with that saying, I myself I'm married to a Korean, but she's married to a Norwegian or a white dude, and these are her words. I mean, she could be more open. She has been in relationships with Koreans in the past, but she could be more open with me than she can just about emotions and feelings. At least this is according to her. She could be more expressive. It allows her to be more expressive, and I think that's what she gets with Arthur. At least in this movie, it seemed like that. But I think that's what she was getting at. I could be completely wrong though.
Okay. No, I like that, and I also found it interesting that, they were having their Skype calls and, and she basically told him, "Hey, I have to stop doing this.
Yeah,
I have to
yeah,
go kind of like live my life." And literally like the next scene she meets Arthur,
yeah. That
and he's kind of like the rebound,
yeah.
the marriage of convenience almost, right? Like
She got her green card. That's right.
she got a green card. They can split the rent and, split some of the costs.
It made
And,
sense.
it was they were both
They're
writers.
both writers. They had a lot in common. And while a rebound, some rebounds can end up being good. I think
Yeah.
this one did. I think the writing aspect helped immensely. They were at a retreat and they could learn from each other. And he's the antithesis of Haesung to some extent. But I think, and just to segue to something different to some extent, I like the fact, by the way, that Nolan and Scorsese both said about this movie that it was their favorite movie of this last year.
Oh, did they?
They did. Yeah. And I think they probably just said that because they didn't want each other to win. like put the emphasis somewhere else, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
but I have a question. I have a couple questions. So, how do you think she was feeling at the end? Because after he took his Uber and they stared at each other for about 2 minutes, she goes and cries to Arthur, her husband, and they're on the what seems to be steps of Brooklyn, and she's crying in his arms. Why do you think she's crying?
That scene when she's walking back, that slow walk, it wrecked me. Like I think I sent you a text like the ending. Like I literally had tears coming down my face because it was so emotional. And I think from watching that scene again and her crying in Arthur's arms, she's she's kind of grieving. She's grieving the loss of what that past life would have been. Right? She had to leave her home country and she had to start a new life. And then Haesung comes back into it, but she's losing something. She's gaining something, but she's also losing
She's
something.
cutting out the past
What did
life.
you think?
I thought she was cutting out the past life, but to me, in the situation, which is going to be very different, I'm again more pragmatic. To me, or empathetic. I thought that was part of it. You're cutting out the past life, and as he always said, Haesung always said, you're the one that I can't remember the exact wording of this. You're the one that always leaves, and he said that again. He said it like 3 times throughout the movie, and I felt that was very poignant, but lacking of understanding and lacking of self awareness when saying it. If you know this is the one that leaves, do you think she's just gonna to get up and leave a marriage of almost that many years for you? Maybe, and that's why I think he took the chance. And that's where I think the romanticism of him in particular in this moment, to be honest, was a little ignorant. But you got to
Even his friends in Korea when they were drinking around the table would be like, you're gonna go to New York City for that
yeah,
girl? Like they're laughing at him.
whatever.
You see the weather? It's gonna be rain and
But
buckets.
it wasn't raining actually when he showed up, which I found interesting. But I think it was, to answer the question directly, I think it was the cutting out of the past life, which is gone forever, or maybe not. You never know. But gone forever. But in the same sense, man, it is pretty romantic if he were to think like this, ignorant or not, and he has kept all that many years, and that's how significant you meant to him, and you're more or less breaking up with him for the second time and now forever. So it's or third time, I guess, in there. But that to me, if it happened to me, would be more the situation of like, this is a really nice person. They're kind. They are slightly askew in emotions that I don't agree with. Could we have worked out? Certainly. We can always entertain this, but and that was his question, like, what if? What if this is one of our past lives already and we're moving on? It's like, I don't know. And I was like, that's
He's like,
it's like,
yeah.
I don't care. Like, I'm not entertaining this. What are you talking about? That's what I got from that moment, or I should say those words. But the words, the silence before, just staring at each other was, yeah, definitely a wrecking of all capacity. Yeah, it was tough.
Did you watch this movie with Sonia
I did.
or by yourself?
Yeah, I watched it.
Did she like it?
She liked it a lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was good. Um, but getting to the main point of rating,
We've got the ratings coming right now.
it only took about
Let's see
16
here.
minutes. So while, simply put, I'm trying to think of a tagline, catchphrase, quick sentence. While I agree that there was very good performances all around, which is going to be reflected in a directing and best performance score, I thought this movie never took step number 2. I felt like it wasn't new. I didn't find it terribly interesting. I felt like Paul Giamatti crushed. And I think the characters themselves had great performances. The actors themselves had great performances. But I felt like, to be fair, I feel like Nothing happened. There was no punchy lines. There was no punching anything. I didn't sit there and smile too often or laugh. And it took me a full week to get through. And it was hard. I don't think I'll ever watch this movie again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I didn't like it. Overall, I didn't like it. The scores will reflect that. I didn't touch me. Paul, I love. Just was like, okay, and my best explanation of this is the storytelling of Trey Parker and Matt Stone of how to tell a story. And I think in '99 they just showed up at NYU and was like, "This is how you tell a story, or this is how we tell stories. We have this, we have this, we have these markers, just as you do. We have this board, and if you ever get to a point and you're trying to write and draft a screenplay or whatever it might be, story of any capacity, and you get to a point where it's just, and then you're in a horrible place. And I felt like this movie was just that until the very end where things changed, but not much of substance. And there wasn't that but, there wasn't that therefore, there wasn't that growth. And even the ending, it was just like kind of lackluster in my view. I would rather, I don't know, Paul commits suicide at the end. I don't know. Like I could go for every other ending besides this, and I just was not having it. So anyway, my performance. I didn't think there was very many quotes to like point to as well. The score annoyed me. There was the recorder throughout was like this is an annoyance more than anything, which is vice versa. The wind chimes were emotive in bringing out the feeling of past lives. But enough of me shitting on this movie. I did think the performances were great.
All right, you got the performances. This movie to me felt like putting on a warm blanket. It's like, yeah, it's not going to do anything new. It's not going to be this crazy story that has you on the edge of your seat, but it just feels good. And that vibe you don't get really in movies anymore. That's why this movie feels so nostalgic. And it's not like a Dead Poet Society where the teacher is like rousing you up and getting you going, but it's like, I mean, like we said, it's a curmudgeon who smells like rotten fish because of a certain condition
Yeah.
that he has. I forget what it's called. Um,
I
but yeah, this movie just hit those buttons for me in a way that I haven't felt in a movie in a long time.
Thimethyl
That
Trimethyl mean he can't break down. Do you think you would offer
and
that to
and
people, by the
I
way? Like that now?
what's
It's
that?
like, I just can't break this down. That's why I smell like fish. Seems, I don't know. Seems like if you're that objective and offering information up, you wouldn't be that much of a curmudgeon. But who am I to tell?
I thought the writing was fantastic. I literally did laugh out loud numerous times during this film, and probably more so on the second viewing. I know that you said that you had to break this movie up over the course of days. I think that might be a reason for your disdain for it.
No.
Like, give it a shot. Give it a proper sit down, watch through, and just feel that warm blanket coming over you.
So I do
Uh,
agree that you definitely are noticing something, but it's more of a warm, wet blanket that is over you. And I don't think you know exactly what is in your house and what is in your cupboard and what is like actually being folded because you have just washed your blanket and it's nice and warm, and then you're putting it on your face and you don't know it's wet without the dryer. That's what this is. I honestly, and it's not about. I've watched The Godfather. I don't know how many times. I've watched plenty of movies for the first time and piecemeal, and almost every single movie I do watch is piecemeal. With that, I mean, even Past Lives, 2 1 hour breaks. It just, I could not get interested in it. It's a story that's been told 1,000 times. This curmudgeon teacher is affected by the student. Like, it's just like, okay. Yeah, and then the score didn't resonate with me. And just the only thing that tied me back was that it was the performances of each of these characters. And I think, I, there was just nothing of, there's nothing of substance really when it came down to it. And I want something more. And while Past Lives was just such a simple framework, things were happening on screen without even using words that was vastly different than the holdovers. But nonetheless, I gave the performance an 85 because I thought that was very good.
I see that. I mean, I would definitely put the performance of the Holdovers above Past Lives just for the the talent that they had to work up with. I mean, Past Lives, like you said, is very simple, straightforward, but layers of depth and layers of emotion. And they were great performances, but I just feel like, I mean, the Holdovers just had better performances, better
Yeah, I
quotes.
agree. So what's your score? Let's hit it.
So mine, where were we at? Holdovers quote, or sorry, performance. Where am I at here? 95, best quote 95, best
What was the
score 90. What's that?
what's the quote?
Oh gosh, I don't have that pulled up right in front of me
Not
here.
that good for you, huh? I can tell you mine.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean the two plants in a pot. That's
Oh
pretty
yeah,
clear. And also, I want to understand you when you're dreaming. That how can you get that?
I think that was mine too. Yeah, yeah.
I did.
But it,
Yeah, if you're talking about the
huh?
history quote of like the history tells you that more about the present than it does about your past. It's not just a retelling of the past. I thought that was a good 70
I
score.
th- I think my favorite quote was when they were walking outside of the liquor store, and he's basically like, "Why did you lie to your old classmate?" And he's like, he doesn't get to. I get to dictate my history. All right, he doesn't get to know it. He's not entitled to that. But yeah, I mean, I felt the emotion. I felt the layers, even though the Holdovers, the kind of the setup, the framing, the story was maybe kind of told before. I don't think it was ever told in this way. Like, it wasn't schmaltzy. It wasn't. Uh, what's the word for it?
It lacks substance.
I think it
Tweak
had a
it.
lot of
Yeah.
substance.
Okay. All right. Editing.
Editing. Where am I at with this? 85.
Okay. Mise en
You
scene.
put 75. I gotta pull this up here because I can't move it over.
You could just go file we
Um,
have shared together. That's so much easier. Like literally
90.
90. I don't know how to go to the chat, but let's see if this works. Why don't you just use it?
10% mise-en-scene, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 70. Sorry, you gave it a 70. I thought you got to give it a 10. I'm reading that
I'm
wrong.
not, unless it's, I wouldn't give something a 10. 70 is like,
No.
this is pretty much the lowest I'll go. Or 65.
I loved in the Holdovers also, like when he was handing out the test grades, like what teacher gives an F plus?
Yeah.
Like, who does that?
All right.
Anyways,
Directing.
directing, I gave an 85, 95, 95.
This is just outrageous. I think you're just, your Paul influence is too high. Best Ember moment.
I gave it 85. It was them sharing the Cherries Jubilee and what that meant outside on the car as it got set aflame.
So the average score, you gave it a 92, which is higher than every movie we've rated so far. Mine is 76.5, and the average is 84.25, which is not the best score that we've had yet, but we haven't done this for very often. So, all right, I'm going to go first. We'll go side by side. I'll make this simple. Past lives. I gave it an 80. I didn't think the performances were as good as the Holdovers, but I'm not objectifying the. It's not like a vice versa for me. I'm just doing it on its own. So I gave it an 80. Um,
Okay.
could have been better. It wasn't a Paul Giamatti performance, but I thought it was pretty good, and especially moments in silence. I just think, oof, that's tough to act. Or maybe I have no idea. And what'd you give it? Performance.
Performance. Let me pull that up.
Just input the score, my friend.
85.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll
Quote.
put in the scores
Best
here.
quote.
I like the dreaming quote. I put that as a 90.
Okay. Best score.
Score 85.
I love
I liked it. It was subtle, but it
it.
wasn't.
Subtle.
Yeah, it didn't overtake the movie. You know what I
There
mean?
was a variety of musical instruments used actually throughout. Best editing.
I really liked it when Celine would cut to clips of her past life as a child and the two of them playing. Like I thought that was a really nice touch. I give the editing at 85.
Okay. I gave it an 80. Best score, I gave it a 90. I really like the music a lot. Best mise-en-scene.
I really like the mise-en-scene. If you notice, like when they're out in, kind of walking around New York and the harbor and everything like that, everybody in the frame, even in the subway, like they're all couples. Some of them are making out, some of them are holding hands, all different ages and things like. It's like, I mean, it was perfect. I gave it a 90.
Directing, I gave a 90. I mean, maybe this is being influenced by the directorial debut, but I really like long shots. I'm a huge Tarkovsky fan, so anytime you get emotion sat with lack of music or adding music, I kind of can go both ways. But I'm just thinking of Stalker, and like there's like a 6 minute scene where there's nothing, it's just like going through a car. There were moments of this
Yeah.
movie that I just felt like it was super super cool, and ones where the scenes I just love because I like things to play out. Now, and it's kind of the inverse of Across the Spider-Verse, where when things get too chaotic and too finicky, it's like, okay, this is a lot. Michael Mann flicks or like Ridley Scott sometimes are just, it's just nonsense. But nonetheless, directing, I give 90.
Directing, I gave the same score, 90. I thought the choices that she made, with, like you said, the long camera, the holds, just even the guts, the balls to have that final scene where they're just staring at each other for a solid, it seemed like an
Yeah,
eternity. Like that takes guts to trust that the story that you're telling on the screen is going to affect the viewer as emotionally as it did.
agreed. Best Imra moment, I gave a 95. There were so many throughout. I'm not giving hundreds, but it was just, I don't
Do
know.
you have an Ember moment that you want to pick out?
I mean, I've already said all of them, but to me, they kind of go hand in hand with the quotes, those quotations,
Yeah.
where it's like the moment, like when they're snuggling, cuddling, and it's just like the representation of our current love and also what we hope to be our future love. And then it's like the transition of, well, how do we take the next step? Well, maybe you can learn Korean, buddy. Maybe that's going to get you closer to your spouse. You could do that. That's step one. That could be good.
Yeah.
You like Yuki Jung? Great. Now learn Korean if you want to learn her and what her dreams are like. And I think that was a very fiery moment.
Yeah. I still I feel like it's one of the best opening scenes I've seen in a movie, but you have to kind of have it on that second viewing of knowing what's kind of going on and what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree
Uh,
there. I definitely agree. Yeah, but
yeah. Because I didn't notice it on the first viewing. I was just like, okay, because I don't know the characters.
oh, did you? Oh, you didn't watch the trailer beforehand then?
I didn't know.
Oh, so I watched the trailers for all of these. Maybe I shouldn't. Like Nothing But Trouble this, but I watched the trailer. I knew who they were. Maybe I
Gotcha.
should stop that, but I had to pick something. I'm waiting on you.
Oh, it's a 90.
It appears Past Lives, probably primarily because I just didn't like Holdovers. 87.5 versus an 84.25 collectively.
Okay.
92 though for your rating is high.
I loved it.
The highest
Like
rated movie we've had so far, and I rated mine. I rated you rated Past Lives 87.5. I gave 76.5 for the Holdovers and 87.5. So we did Past Lives identically. Look at that.
okay.
I didn't like the Holdovers.
You didn't like I can't believe that.
Um,
I can't believe that.
you know what? I just think that the writing just didn't take any chances, or didn't take many chances, and it's evident in that, at least for me, dude. I shouldn't hate me. Just
Well, I guess it kind of goes back to when before the movie was actually going to be a movie with Alexander Payne, the writer pitched it as a pilot for a TV show, and
I think it'd be
I
better
guess
actually for
Alexander.
a TV show. I could see.
I think it would be good.
I
Yeah,
think it would be better because you can
like
flesh
a
out things better.
eight episode, hour
Yeah,
long,
I think
or could even be half hour. I feel
better.
like.
But why don't we, by the way, transition? And this was fun. What do you think is actually going to win, though? Like actually win, not just what desires.
So I've seen Oppenheimer twice now, and I've seen Killers of the Flower Moon twice, both over 3 hours of my life each viewing.
Yeah,
and I think those are the two front runners.
of course.
I love to see Marty win, but I think what you're asking, what do I think will win, or what I want to win?
What do you think will win?
I think Oppenheimer will win. That's my prediction.
Me too, and I think Killian's going to win as well.
You think Killian's
Yeah.
going to win?
Yeah.
Did you see where Paul Giamatti went after he won his Golden Globe for the Holdovers?
No, I didn't see his speech.
He was in a full tux in a full restaurant at In-N-Out eating a cheeseburger.
It sounds like Sideways.
Yeah, it does. It does.
No, I didn't see that. But yeah. Good luck to all involved. I think Oppenheimer is going to just destroy, like pretty much just get all of the awards.
Did you like Oppenheimer?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Oppenheimer. I watched it in its entirety.
Oh wow!
Straight through. If I like something, I will, as you say, I will go full in, and I will, no matter what, I will watch it. But if not, if I'm disinterested, you don't really get me too much.
Okay.
But yeah, I think Oppenheimer's going to crush. I don't think it's either that or Killers that's going to get Best Picture. I don't think there's any other option. Although, Parasite winning was in 2019, was massive, but I thought Parasite's a better movie than both Holdovers and Past Lives.
Well, Past Lives and Holdovers are also in another category, competing against each other in Best Original Screenplay. So I wonder which one's going to win and duke it out.
I'd have to read the screenplay.
I'll get on that.
Yeah. Anyway,
I don't read screenplays.
I literally have to go run. So there's that. But until next week when we discuss, would you like to go into what
we're going all out. We're doing 90s Nick Cage, so get ready for that. I'm going to be doing The Rock. And what do you have?
Con Air, baby. There's only two that you could choose here. Con Air versus The Rock. Granted, your choice is The Rock. I wanted The Rock too. I'll take Con Air.
That's what you got to do. See you next week.
Our world.